And now I'll be able to show one of many, many examples that we probably have of this and how this works end to end on the Prolific platform. So I'm just going to share my screen. So as I mentioned, this is just one example, and this is the type of task that Enzo's been talking about, where we would look for really specific domain experts, and actually you need a level of expertise to be able to evaluate the output of the AI model. And in this case, we're talking about evaluating the output from an AI-powered medical research assistant. So it looks through medical journals that are published and actually summarizes or analyzes the content of them. And the goal here is really a task that we refer to as factuality. So it's essentially assessing the accuracy. So I'm going to start by showing you how you would create that initial data set. And this is the format that we look for the data set to be in, to upload to Prolific, to AI Task Builder, to then render your task, your evaluation task in the platform. So I'm going to show you this example data set here. As you can see, it's just a simple CSV file. First row becomes the titles of the containers where your text is shown to participant. And then each row underneath that becomes an individual task. So if I work my way along from left to right in that first row, you've essentially got a number of different points that are context of the original medical journal. So in this case, it was the name, the question it was in response to, the results, and then the conclusion and relevance. And the part that's really important here is that in column F here, we've got the LLM summary. So this is what I mentioned is the part that our participants are going to be evaluating, is how effectively or how accurately did that summarize the content from that medical journal. Now that I've shown you this data set, I'm going to show you how that would then look once you start to upload that into AI Task Builder. So I'm going to show you that just now. So I'm going to go on to here. This, for those of you who are already Prolific customers, this probably looks very familiar. If you're new, this will be what you see once you're signed in to the platform. And you've got AI Task Builder here, or you can access it from the menu at the left-hand side. So when I click into that, I can then create a new batch. A batch is what we class as your data set paired with the tasks that you configure. So I'm going to then click create a new batch because I want to upload that data set that I've just shown and then create my tasks around that. I'm going to give my task a name, so evaluating the factuality of AI generated summaries, and then I'm going to upload my CSV file here so you can see that's uploaded. When I go through to the next step, the system's looking for me to input a name and a description, and this is so that it shows to participants so that they know what they're going to be taking part in if they take part in your task. So this really is like a high level introduction that almost is the thing that allows a participant to decide whether or not they are capable of want to take part in the task, and actually they'll see that on their dashboard. Underneath that is the place where we can add much more detailed instructions. Now, I've not added a huge amount of detail here, it's just an example, but actually you can add lots of detail here so that participant can understand exactly how you expect them to take part in the task, any context or information that they might need. And the great thing about this is they can access this, they see it when they first come in to start the task, but they also can access it at any point throughout the task. So it means if they need a reminder of any definitions or context, it's available to them anytime. What I'm going to take you through now is adding the actual specific annotation instructions to your data set. So if you remember that CSV file I showed you, this is then how it renders within the system. So what I've got here is each of my data points that I saw in the rows of my CSV, and I've got that first row as an example on the left-hand side here where I've got the context from that medical journal, and then I've got the LLM summary down here, and that's the part that will be evaluated. So at that stage, I'm then going to add my evaluation instructions for the participant. So I'm going to choose from different formats that those inputs can come in. In this case, I want to define specific multiple choice that they can select from, but I also want them to then explain their selection. So I'm going to choose multiple selection with free text, and I'm going to add that. I'm going to then explain what they need to be evaluating, so the accuracy according to the original journal excerpts. And I'm going to also define each of the answers that are available. So as you can see here, I've got a number of different options. So inaccurate, unsupported, disputed, and I can continue to add them until I'm satisfied I've got all of the variations that I want the participant to select from in the multiple choice. In addition, as I mentioned, I want the participants to explain a little bit about why they've made their selection. So what will also happen is they will be able to then put in the free text to say exactly why they chose that. And I'm just going to put a bit of a prompt for them to say, please explain your rating. Once I've configured that, and in this case, if I wanted to, I could go on and add secondary, third, as many questions as I wanted to ask them in terms of evaluating that. In this case, I'm going to ask that one primary question. And now that I've done that, I want to preview it as a participant just to check how that looks. And what you can see here is, again, you've got the data point on the left-hand side that the participant's going to be evaluating. And on the right-hand side is going to be the options that they will select from. And if, as in this preview, I selected unsupported, then what pops out is a free text box to say, please explain your rating, so that I can gather more insight from that participant about why they've chosen that option. As I mentioned before, if at any point the participant has forgotten some of the initial instructions you gave or the context, they can access it anytime just by clicking See Task Details button. Because this is just a preview for me as the researcher who's configuring this, I'm going to go back to my template and I'm actually satisfied now that I'm ready to publish. I do have the option to save the template if I wanted to come back to it later, but at this part, what I want to do is actually publish that out to prolific participants to take part in the task. So I'm going to click Save and Set Up Study. Before I do that, the system is looking for me to define how many of those data points that I've just in tasks that I've configured, how many of those a participant can take as part of a single submission. This is really relevant for much larger data sets, which is much more, it is really what we're seeing being uploaded onto the system. And it's so that you can batch that up so that many of your data points can be annotated in parallel. In this case, I've just got four data points because it was just an example. So I'm just going to allow each participant to annotate one of those. This next step that I'm going to take you on to is really the part where you can see the huge value of getting the speed of data, but from the exact type of annotators or evaluators that you want, which is finding the right participants on Prolific. So this next part will look very familiar to those of you who have used Prolific in the past, which is actually the page where you would typically publish any tasks on Prolific. So I've already configured my task, as you've just seen. Some of that information is pulled through onto here, so that's copied across just to show the same description, the same name. I would just give it an internal name, which is this part here, so for my own records, when I go back to refer to that, I can see when I published it, and if I've got different iterations, I can see them listed with my own sort of name for that task. I'm going to flag this as annotation because I want participants to know that's the type of task that they're going to be taking. I'm also going to flag all countries available, as you just saw there, because I don't actually mind any sort of geographical specification. I could have selected, UK, US, whatever, so that I can specify if it's, maybe if it's relevant to a specific area. And this is the part where I'm going to add screeners. Now, as I showed at the beginning, the content that was being evaluated was very specific to the medical domain, and it really required someone who understood how to sort of read and assess that sort of medical journal or medical papers. So with that in mind, the domain experts that I need are individuals who have had a certain level of education, just because that would give them the experience with reading that sort of content and assessing it. So I'm going to put in that it needs to be someone who's got a graduate or a PhD. And I'm going to apply that. And what I can see is even with that filter in place, I've got 53,000 or over 53,000 available active participants on Prolific. So I then want to drill down even further because I don't just want those that have had that sort of degree or PhD. I want those that have actually got that in the health and medicine domain. So I'm going to, again, apply that second filter. And what I can see is I've got over 1,000 participants still available, even though I've narrowed that down to that sort of very specific category. So that's great news for me because I know that I've got lots of people available to annotate the data set that I've just uploaded. So with that in mind, the final step is I'm just going to define an estimate of how long it takes to complete that task, and actually then define how much I'm going to pay the participant. As Enzo mentioned, it's really important for us the well-being and fair pay of the participants on Prolific. So we put a recommended pay on there, but you as the data collector can define exactly how much that is. Then I can see a summary of how much it's going to cost, and then I can actually publish that task. So the final thing I'm going to show you here is this is essentially the submissions page. So once I've published that task, I can literally watch as the submissions start to roll in, and this will happen minutes after publishing. In a second, I'll show you the data set that I published. Yeah, we want to review those submissions and then see the data, the evaluations that have been submitted as part of those. So this here is that same page that I showed before, but it's the page where the submissions have already come in. And this would start to fill up as they were active and then actually as they go through to complete. So you can watch that happening in real time. And this is really the thing our customers think of as like the moment where they see the huge value of Prolific is that data starts coming in minutes. You're not talking about hours or days. It's minutes that the data starts rolling in, and it really makes the ability to collect high quality data super fast. Now, although I was only collecting four submissions here, so not the scale that we're used to, much smaller. As you can see, it took less than 10 minutes to collect these, and that was from those really specific domain experts that I specified. So it shows you how quickly, so even if I was publishing 400 or 4,000 data points, those could be annotated also within minutes. It's not going to take a long time to fill those. And then what I want to do is I want to download my task responses. So this is the part where I want to get my evaluations of that model output. And this is the final thing I'm going to show you today. So let's actually review that output data set. So you've got a lot of information here. So things like submission ID, study ID, the timestamp of when it was completed. In column H, you've got the task ID, which is what I had specified in my original data set. It allows me to keep a track of actually which data point the annotation was for and connect that back. And then also got the selection that the participants who evaluated the model outputs gave for each of those LLM summaries. So essentially, the majority of these are telling me that it was accurate and one of them is disputed. What this gives me is, imagine this was a much larger data set with many more evaluations, what I can then see is I can use that to sense check how well my model's doing in a particular area. So in this case, it was evaluated on accuracy. So I can determine how accurate is the model and summarizing those medical journals, and also I can identify is it hallucinating, is there inaccuracies. And again, the great thing about having the explanation there as well is you've got those domain experts giving an explanation as exactly why they've maybe selected that. So in this case, this participant is selected disputed and then flagged that it didn't explicitly say that it was implemented in 2014. So again, it's calling out exactly where the inaccuracies were so that I can then determine if there are hallucinations there. Enzo mentioned about doing this in an iterative way, and this is exactly what we've seen customers using this end-to-end process for, is that they may run a very similar process a number of times, and what we would hope to see is that sort of column I, where you're looking at the evaluation, you would expect to see that improve over time as the model was improved and maybe some of those hallucinations or the model's tendency to produce inaccurate information starts to be eliminated. And that's the sort of the great thing about this process is you can see that improvement over time, and also then it can give you confidence to just deploy the AI application that you've built with that confidence of the expert human feedback behind it. Yeah, fantastic. So that hopefully gives you an idea. There's loads of other use cases that we're seeing in our platform at the moment. Some really exciting stuff in AI development of loads of different domains, and it's great to see our participants helping to contribute to that.